Hi, Michelle.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. So, just so you know, I'm happy to have you on here. I feel like I was watching some of your content, and even as a, like male person, I guess that's what I am, a man. I was very much so wanting to watch more. It was very, like, I was learning a lot from what I was hearing, even though it was more about like the episodes I watched were more about like
Mm.
issues with women and work.
Yeah, I think, just the fact that you want to have this conversation is going to open up and help somebody. So I think it's awesome and I'm glad to be here. Thanks for finding me.
Yeah, yeah. So I loved something you wrote to me about resilience. I've thought of resilience as a strength. It's a good trait to have. So I feel like that's very apt. It's a very enticing thing to learn about. So what is resilience to you and the work you do you're a coach, correct?
Yes, I'm a trainer, consultant, and coach. And the way that we view resilience is that resilience is really more of a lifestyle. It's not something you have to wait and realize in the face of adversity. It's rather something that you can be building every single day so you're equipped to be able to deal with the challenges, the stress, and the adversity that's inevitable in life.
Mm. Yes, yes, adversity, another catchphrase. So I often look at the definitions of words on basically Google. That's what I usually Google, the meanings of words. And I'm sure I've Googled adversity and resilience at some time, but I think to put things in context, could you put what you do in context for our audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like a lot of people believe, well, when something happens to me, I'll build resilience. And instead, we want people to be thinking about two things. We want them to think about what is their mindset around adversity and stress, because if we know it's inevitable, how we view that experience is so important. And then we are what we repeatedly do. So we want people to realize there are things you could be doing every single day to help yourself the best you can feel
Mm,
so you're ready so that stress doesn't devour you and adversity doesn't come along and take you down. Like we believe that you can literally come to the plate and be able to navigate that just like ebb and flow with what's coming versus having it take you down.
right. So when I was younger, I used to think about going with the flow. It used to be the hip thing to say when I was younger. It was pretty common, and nowadays lingo has changed a little bit. But I feel like all the maybe the basics or the underpinning theme of culture and society and people in general, what we have in our hearts is never changes unless you make an effort to change it. And so I feel like what you're doing is helping people make that effort possible and also be more aware of what they can do to make that change.
I think, one of the biggest eye openers for me in my own life was realizing that there's no amount of disagreement with the challenges that come along that is going to change.
Mm,
I can disagree with, some of the challenges I've had in my life. I could disagree with it all day long. It doesn't change it. So my invitation to my clients and people that I get to talk to is like, ask yourself, do you believe life is happening to you or life is happening for you? So when you believe life is happening to you, you take more of like a victim mentality, like, why, of course this is happening to me, right? And there's no power there. But
mm,
instead, if you say to yourself, hey, all right, I don't understand it, but there's some lesson in this mess that I'm going to gain from it. So I'm just going to remain curious and put my energy toward being more curious than being in disagreement with it.
right, right. So you really do know this stuff. I was kind of trying to throw a curveball there, but I think you got it, smashed it out of the park, crushed it out of the park or whatever. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So there's a lot of things in people's lives that have to do with work that, especially nowadays with COVID just happening, that they're dealing with. Like a lot of people work from home, and it's really popular in the tech industry, especially here in the Bay Area. And I'm sure people have I know people personally who are taking advantage of that, and they generally seem happier. I know when I was working from home, I was happier, but I needed to make a change. So if we could talk about like specific productivity tips that people can enlist while they're working from home, yeah, with resilience and adversity.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, so first of all, working from home is a great thing, but it can be extremely isolating, right? And we lose connection with people. So I think it's real important to check in with yourself and understand what you need, right? A lot of people just stay on the hamster wheel and they just keep going and they don't really take a second and reflect on like what is it that I need. Everyone's always so focused on meeting deliverables, doing whatever our responsibilities are. It's important to make sure you're filling your cup. I say this to people all the time. If you want to show up the best version of yourself in your life, whether it's for your family, your partner, your boss, your career, you got to fill your cup. There's no sidestepping that, because the impact of not taking care of ourselves is we don't show up the best version of ourselves. And a lot of times people shortcut the self-care, but then they don't realize that that's directly impacting their patience, their ability to focus, their ability to just show up the best version of themselves. So resilience is really built in what we do every single day for ourselves. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what are some for myself? What I've been doing recently? I go on walks regularly. I haven't been doing it for the last like week or so, or maybe even 2 weeks, and just recent. And I felt the effects of it. So these things you do become part of your routine. How can someone adjust their routine if for some reason they don't have enough time to do these things for themselves?
So that's the thing. Like, you have to shift your perspective around these things. These are not nice to do's if there's time, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
for example, getting 8 hours of sleep, moving your body, staying hydrated. These are all essentials to keep our bodies optimal. But what happens is people start to function on a deficit and then they wonder why they're exhausted or on the brink of burnout. So you really got to get the impact of doing these things for yourself, feeling how good you can feel. So, like, get
Mm-hmm.
8 hours of sleep, make the walk a non negotiable. Start to realize how good you can feel, and you won't want to forego that for an extra hour of work. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, like, and no one's coming to save you. Like, no one's gonna go, oh, hey, let me take that off your plate so you can go and take care of you. Like, we got to grab onto that. We got to make our self care absolutely non-negotiable for us. I want to feel good. To feel good. I don't want to deplete myself. I don't want to be on the fast track to burnout. So I have to do this for me.
Right, right. So that's something I did. I have learned. Someone else gave me the similar advice in a different way. It was, of course, different words, but I interpreted it like what you said. And so what I did in those 2 weeks was I started eating more because I was doing intermittent fasting and I was going to the gym and I was walking. So I just was like, okay, I'm fine with my body how it is. So I don't need to starve myself with intermittent fasting. I don't need to go to the gym and get that endorphin rush. I can just do what I want with the food, and that was my crutch, I guess. Is that a crutch? I'm kind of yeah, it felt good because it did work. And the last 2 days, I've been going through it, but I was able to make it through each hurdle without decompensating.
Yeah, I think we have to listen to our bodies. I think that there's a lot of great recommendations out there, but if you're feeling depleted because you're
Hmm.
like lacking fuel and you're working out too hard, like my sister's always in my face going, "Why do you work out so hard? Why don't you just go for a walk?" And I'm like, "Because I like it." But she's like, real when she's like, when you're putting your body in inflammation, you're giving your body a lot of inflammation by doing that, right? The truth is you just got to listen to your body. If you feel that you were exhausted and you were starving yourself, right? Or you were overdoing it at the gym, like, we know our bodies. Like, they have theories out there of things we should and shouldn't do, and they change like the wind. So
Hmm.
your best assessment is truly just listening, tapping into what do I need right now? Do I need to eat something? Is that going to help me feel a little bit better because I'm dragging, you know?
Yeah. So you know at the gym, so at the gym, so you go to the gym, right? So I heard that you go to the gym. I don't know what type of gym, if whether it's like CrossFit or
Yeah, it is
Orange Theory.
similar.
Around here it's Orange Theory.
Yeah, it's a High Rocks gym. I don't know if you're
Oh,
familiar with High Rocks. So it's a High Rocks gym. So I'm pushing sleds and I'm doing
hmm.
hard stuff, right? But for me, it's expansion, right? When we're pushing ourselves, we're expanding ourselves, and then we're realizing what I'm capable of. So like I
Hmm.
like to do that, right? But I also need rest days. So like I have to listen to my body. I have to tap
Yeah.
into how
Cheat
how I'm
days.
feeling. Yeah, man. Like we have to.
Right, right. So that's wonderful. Yeah, so stretching is also very important. Like that's one way I was able to switch my routine up once my body was like, okay, this is not what I want to do. I was feeling fatigued. I just stretched at the gym, and you know, I kind of learned that from a person who was I got into that because I was like at the gym and I met somebody who was like talking to me, and that's like she was just stretching, and it was the morning. I was like, that's perfect for the morning. Like, why do you want to go and like 6 a.m. at the gym and start like huffing and puffing lifting weights? Stretching is perfect for that. So there's also a time for these things too. Make, like you said, making time.
But a lot of times people aren't tapping into like what their body really needs. They're just
Hmm.
going with the flow, like they're going with like, oh well, this is the new fad. I'm gonna go do this.
Hmm.
And then they're just discounting what their body's screaming for. So,
Right.
there's a lot of value in just, being present to what you need and being okay with what you need, you know?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I feel like it's somewhat hard to do. In a past episode, maybe not hard. I don't know the exact word for it, but I did a I did an episode with a coach, and he had okay, I'm gonna have to look up his name. Sorry, hold on. I'm gonna edit this. Oh yeah, sorry, I remember now. Okay, okay. So I went to in a past episode I was interviewing a shadow work coach, and he told me like this whole thing about labels. He said that he works as a shadow work coach, but that's kind of a label as well. And one thing he said about that was that these labels, it's not that I forgot. I totally forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, I'll probably, yeah, these labels, they don't, yeah, so you said something about labels, so if you could continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, we get in trouble when we label things, so I can't appreciate where you were going with this conversation. I think, labels are limiting and they're defining, and I don't know, we're fluid human beings having a life experience, and we're constantly evolving and changing, and we have different needs. So I think it's really important to, not be so attached to those types of things because it just leaves us in a very confined space.
Yeah, so what about like sharing this information with somebody? Because I feel like a lot of people take these labels and they don't understand that these labels, whether or not you're for or against labels, it's like think of the white elephant. What is it? Think of the white elephant. Like I think it's okay to put labels on things, in other words, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
But at the same time, that's not the way my mind works, but I do it because it's just what's accessible. It's
hmm
keeping it simple.
hmm yeah. Well, I mean, there's familiarity with a label, right?
Hmm.
So, I mean, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it constricts us.
Yeah, and like we were saying, this idea of resilience is learning these things that will you'll know at the right moment. Like once you take care of yourself,
Yes.
all the stuff we're talking about. Once you know resilience and you've been through a little adversity with your routine and your methods, you start to learn, and it becomes easier. Although it can't. When it gets hard, in other words, when it gets hard, it'll get easier at some point.
Yeah, I think the magic's in the consistency, when I coach people, I'm asking them, what is your energy level on a scale from 1 to 5? What is your stress level on a scale from 1 to 5? And how empowered are you feeling about your life, 1 to 5? So if their scores are pretty low in those areas, then we back into that and we say, okay, so why do you think you have low energy? Oh, well, you're fasting. Okay, so are you eating?
Mm.
And like, are you eating? Are you getting 8 hours of sleep? Are you hydrating yourself? Are you disconnecting from work and connecting to something you love? Because we can actually get energy from doing a hobby that we love because we're completely disconnecting from the things that we have to do. So like little things like that. That's what creates balance in our lives and gives us a little bit of a reprieve. We need a disconnect from work. I know a lot of people will probably disagree with me, but like, and I get it. Listen, I'm just as ambitious as the next person as an entrepreneur. Trust me, I could work around the clock if I wanted to. It's easy to. But I also know that for my own sanity, I have to disconnect. I have to go do something. I have to go nourish myself. I have to step away because that's only going to give me a refresh so I bring back a fresh mind to the work that I love to do. So we have to create that. We have to have those things in our life. So really taking a step back and reflecting, like, so many people come to me and they don't have a hobby, and I'm like, dude, like,
Mm.
did you ever have a hobby? Well, yeah, when I was in college, I da 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 da. Okay, why don't you do that again? Well, I'm not going to be in an orchestra. Who cares? Play the musical instrument that brought you joy, just for the sake of it. You know what I mean? So little things like that. That's where we get a little bit of like balance in our life. So we're not just like work
Mhm.
responsibilities. More to life than that.
Right. Um, so something I've heard, so it's kind of hard for me to put this in words, but when there's this work that we do that we love, it turns into like your passion turns into work, and then you have no hobby out of it. Or maybe the other thing I was going to say, yeah, so
So yeah, so you have to make sure that, the last thing you want to do is get sick of something you love.
mhm,
So you got to put like those guardrails in place to say, okay, I'm committed that I'm going to like do X amount of hours, but then, at such and such time, I'm gonna go do that other thing I like to do so I can refresh myself because I don't want to not be in love with the work I do because I'm burning myself out working 24/7 on the same thing. Which I could imagine in your space, in the tech space, is probably very easy to just keep going, right? And
yeah,
keep attached to a screen, keep thinking about it. And that's the other thing. When we're not on the screen, our minds tend to race and think about the work that we're doing. That's why it's even more important to just go do something mindless so that you have to focus on what you're doing and disconnect again from the mental work.
right. And I feel like you mentioned tech work was often something that people can kind of live. They live and breathe the technology, and that's kind of something that they've learned is, or I've learned would make someone successful. I don't particularly do it, but I'm learning to now that I'm more focused on my career. But I've found that some workplaces don't put the support system in place that is very accessible, or it's not talked about at work. Nobody. I don't know, like what type of workplaces are you familiar with?
So there's a lot of different, I mean, like I've worked with a bunch of different organizations from like a nonprofit to a restaurant to a steakhouse to banks. I'm talking to two banks. I've worked with a couple of banks in the past. It's all about the culture, right? Like whatever the culture in the environment is. But I would say when we get into jobs in these organizations, we have to do our homework too to make sure it's a culture that feels right for us. It's not up to your employer to create balance. It's up to you to create balance. Like for us to sit here and say, well, my employer didn't da da da. Like no, like you take care of you. You go and step away and do what you need to do so you get to perform the best of your ability.
Yeah, there's a movie. I'm looking it up right now. I have my phone here. I'm being distracted. I'm like, okay.
Hmm.
Someone just texted me. I better attend to that. I felt my phone vibrating in my pocket. I was like, oh, I better do it. But anyway, so there's a movie. I don't remember the name. I was trying to look it up, and it's about it's about a fashion. She's a intern or something, and she's drawn. She wants to. She's going through her motions. I haven't seen the movie, but the trailer looked interesting. And then there's the high-powered boss who's actually the one who calls all the shots. And it's one. It seems like it's. I don't know the exact premise of the movie, but I've seen. A lot of movies are the same, so I have seen movies like it. But that was kind of what I was referring to. Like, you have different types of managers.
Hmm.
Your managers there's nice manager and I remember the nice managers because I've had some nice managers.
Yeah.
But like the same time there's those hard driving managers. Those are the two archetypes. I'm not going to call them stereotypes, archetypes
Uh-huh.
that are most familiar to me.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and every single experience that we have is shaping us and teaching us something. Some of the worst bosses I've ever had taught me, holy crap, I never want to look like that person. I never,
Hmm.
ever want to lead like that person. So there's lessons in all of it. But at the end of the day, like, no one's taking care of you but you. So we all have,
Oh,
you know what I mean?
so
Like, yeah, like
yeah,
you have to take care of you. You can't
yeah.
like relinquish what you need for your self-care because of the demands of a employer.
Right. So the demands of an employer, yes, but what if the employer is actually your support network? So he's someone who gives you advice. He's kind of molding you to be someone that's good at your position, and you have maybe you haven't made it to yeah. So some high performing people, they've already built these skills over years, and maybe they don't want to change. That can be also maybe they don't want to change, and as well someone who's new at it may be more amenable to changes or more willing to change because they're trying to improve themselves. So how do you balance this, like the learning curve?
I think, we all have to remember we have the ability to influence people. Regardless if they're in their role 20 years or whatever, we all have the ability to influence. One of the coolest ways you can do that is you could just start asking questions. Like, so,
Mm,
hey, how do you handle stress? What's your outlet? What do you go and do? When
mm,
you're like really stressed out from this job, like, what do you go do? And just like open that conversation and they share, it will reveal what they do or they don't do. And it'll give you a lot of insight. If they say, I don't have anything, I just work because I'm blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, that's interesting because as a human being, you need balance. But if he or she doesn't have that for themselves, you know what you're dealing with. But if they do, then you're subtly going to be given permission to take care of yourself.
right.
So that's important. But we never underestimate the power to influence people. Like, even as a junior person, I remember when I was a junior person, I had the ability to influence anyone, like, so don't relinquish all power, is what I'm trying to say. Like, you have the ability to, like, ask questions, influence, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah. So I kind of so in school I've read about adult learners and how they affect the classroom, and they talk a little bit about if you if they learners can affect the classroom in a good way by being themselves, just being there,
Hmm.
asking questions. One of the things that they pointed out. So I feel like some people are averse to learning or admitting they're learning because then you're admitting you still have some place to go. You aren't maybe being genuine about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all in trouble when we think that we have it all figured out. We're all evolving, we're all growing. And, the leader that thinks that they have it all figured out, is just unrealistic.
Right.
I think because we all, as human beings, we need to be making progress and growing. And the riskiest thing is to think I've arrived and I know it all. That's
Hmm.
dangerous because there's so much to learn.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of fun once you get there and you're like just in the moment, and just it's and kind of under the you realize I am enough, and what you're doing is not good. Like people talk about judging things, and like I talk about it a lot, and I've been thinking about it. Like how do I not apply all these like things I've learned over the past few years and actually improve myself in the career field? Because I've learned some bad habits. So how does one, like, 21 takes 21 days to learn a habit? How many days does it take to unlearn a habit?
I think you got to crowd it out and create new habits.
Hmm.
Crowd out the things you don't want. Replace it with things that you know you do want, things that are going to yield you what you want in your life, like, and adopt some discipline around the new things. And before you know it, you'll crowd out the things that are not helping you.
Right. So the things that are not helping you. So how would one, I mentioned judging. So how would one, I talk about like mood journals, but how would one like decide what are these things that are helping you and what are these things that take, you need to get away from?
What are your end goals? What are your end game goals? I mean, that's it. Like, where's your destination, and are the habits that you have going to get you closer to those goals or move you further away?
Mm.
So that's the assessment right there. Where are you going, and is what you're doing going to help you get there?
Hmm. Yeah, sounds like someone just surfing Facebook at work and being like, "Yeah, this is uh, this is my hobby. This is helping me out in the moment," and then they're on Facebook all the time and never doing any work.
Yeah, yeah, so true.
Yeah, yeah. So I need to wonder about this because I've worked with many women and I really do appreciate what they brought to the table. And some of them were getting, really skilled at their job.
Hmm.
Uh, and I saw they were really good at their job, but there's the idea that women don't get paid as much as men. I've heard that somewhere, but I don't really understand it. Maybe you could describe what it's like.
I think fundamentally we have to remember that oftentimes men will go for things that are beyond their skill set on paper, and women won't. You know, it's just the courage piece. Obviously, we have work to do to compensate women as much as we compensate men, but in positions, because they don't feel like they're fully qualified, where a man would have no problem applying even if they weren't fully qualified. It's the confidence they're bringing to the conversation, the confidence they're bringing with them in how they show up, who they're being. Like, I think we've all been around people who are confident and show up and don't care, and the people who are like, you know, there's some underlying insecurity or
Mm.
concern or imposter syndrome, whatever.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. Imposter syndrome was kind of a catchphrase for me. I definitely have felt like I'm not skilled at my job before. I've been told by managers before, you're not doing enough to warrant a for me to give you a raise. Sorry, not warrant. That sounds like trying to I'm being arrested or something. But anyway, uh, so like it was very distressing to me to hear that from a manager who I looked up to. So how does one overcome these types of statements like you're not doing well at the job, you're not the and I feel like it's internalized as a way, if somebody says I'm not good at my job, I have to get better, or somebody says I'm not good at my job, like you said, it's me. I'm not better.
But all it is it's a skill that is a gap. So it's what we make things mean. If somebody tells you you're not doing your job well, you have two ways to look at that. Either I'm going to get curious and find out exactly where my deficits are and work on those, versus you tell me I'm not good at my job, then am I making that mean I'm not good enough? I'm not good enough. When
Hmm.
really it's just a skill. All right, so you're not performing to the expectation. One, what's the expectation? Two, what are the skills in order for me to get to that destination, and do I have them, and what can I do to change that? It's not you aren't good enough. But so many times people hear that I'm not good enough, and it becomes very personal. When really
Right.
it's just a deficit between where they want you to be and where you are.
Yeah. And I've taken that upon myself to find in the past to find. Well, no, right now I'm taking it upon myself to find those areas that I'm really good at, and I've been encouraged by the people above me in the organization I work for to find those areas that I'm good at. It's a startup environment, so you can wear a lot of hats,
Yeah.
and so there is that availability. Some people may not have that luxury.
Yeah, well, you got to figure out, like, you know, what is it that you could do differently? Because clearly all that's saying it's feedback, and feedback is a gift. It's what we do with the feedback. It's what we make it mean, and it's what action we take from the feedback. That's
Right.
that's how we get better.
Okay. So one of my favorite things to do with coaches like yourself, I don't get the opportunity very often, is do impromptu session with you if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
I'll buy you a coffee, or I'll buy you a coffee later.
Perfect.
So I wanted to talk about the hobby thing. How would I find a new hobby that checks off all the boxes with what we've been talking about up in this
Yeah,
to this
I
point?
would reflect on what you liked to do when you were younger. There's a couple of things, like what did I like to do when I was younger? What was, some people were like artists, or they like to play an instrument or photography. Like you go on something like Pinterest or even on TikTok and you start looking up fun hobbies to do and just start exploring and seeing what you naturally gravitate toward. It might not be the thing that you did when you were younger, but there's a whole new world of things that you could do as a
Hmm.
hobby. So it's like you really got to just put in the work and start investigating what would get me excited. Would it get me excited to get a camera and to go to different parks every weekend and start taking pictures of really cool things in nature? Would it get me excited to go and get an easel and some watercolor and just start painting and just start whatever?
Hmm.
Would it, like for me, like I bought a ukulele. I don't know anything about playing a ukulele, but I bought a ukulele because I was like, okay, I'm going to learn how to play a ukulele. Why not? It's something that's going to pull me away from always working. And it just was something I always wanted to learn. So, but you have to get curious about what it is that would get you excited, because you need that thing to be excited about. That's what brings you balance, a bit more fulfillment in your life.
I love that word, fulfillment. I've been searching for that for quite some time. I think I'm gonna have to take a trip to Hawaii, buy a ukulele, and have some pina coladas.
There you go.
So yeah, so I feel like for me, the hobbies that I gravitate towards are more active things that keep my mind occupied, like things that keep my mind occupied, because I have a tendency to ruminate.
Okay.
And so I'm looking for ways to focus. Some of the times these things that I focus on, I lose interest in it. And then I think, oh, I'm so bad off now. I've lost interest in the things I enjoy. That's a thing about me. A lot of people have opportunities that they maybe become really skilled at playing a ukulele, and then they're like, "Wow, this is amazing. I'm really skilled." And then you just keep doing it. But for me, I'm trying to take the easy route on my hobbies. So,
Hmm.
for the example I said before, like stretching at the gym is like my hobby right now.
That's awesome. And listen, I think it's great. And, I want to just talk about the ruminating thing, because so many
Hmm.
people ruminate. You're not alone. Like, so many people ruminate. The reality is, though, we get to shift our attention. Where our attention goes is where our energy is going to flow. So if you find yourself ruminating, like, you have the power to change the radio station off of that thought. Like, you don't have to go down the rabbit hole. But, some people feel like, well, I'm thinking about this, I'm just going to ride it. Like, don't. Like, change the station. Think about something
Right.
that feels good. Redirect your focus. Because the reality is, whatever we focus on will always expand. So if you
Hmm.
start ruminating on something negatively, just know the more you're thinking about it, the worse you're going to feel. And the more energy and headspace you're going to keep giving it, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So, how you stop that is just shift your gaze else. What is it that you makes you feel good? What's a
Right.
positive thought? What's good in your life right now?
Right.
Suspend
So
your energy, suspend your focus on the negative.
Right. Negativity can definitely it's a rabbit hole in itself, negativity. On the internet, there, the rabbit hole becomes something that is very accessible. Like there's so many avenues like to go with these types of distractions that are sometimes kind of fun. It's kind of fun to on the internet to just surf and like be like, I don't have to catch the biggest wave ever. I'll take this little tiny wave and fall down. Kind of, what do they call that in playfulness? Make mistakes. I don't know. When you're
Hmm.
playing, it's not really a mistake.
Yep, exactly. Yep. I think sometimes we take life so seriously. We
Mm,
are supposed to be having fun. It can, it can be fun,
yeah.
like the intensity doesn't have to always be there. Like that's the other part of the hobby is like just have fun. Life, throws you curveballs. There's always going to be a challenge. Work can be hard. Family life can be difficult. Relationships can be emotional. Have something that you can go play and do and just be like a kid. We all deserve that.
Yeah, I think we all deserve that. I mean, I don't know if I think because I know we deserve that. Yeah, so it's been a very fun ride talking with you today. I'm happy that you were able to join us, and I hope that we can sit down again, have this discussion. And if anybody out there wants to, you know, hear more about what you do, or maybe even join you for a session, how can they reach you?
The best place to reach me is going to be on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is like my second home. You can go there, or I have a lot of content that I'm pushing out on TikTok and Instagram. So if you go over to TikTok, you're going to find me under Resilience Coach Michelle. And I'm always pushing out like motivational posts and common messages that we forget, little things, little nuggets. So, there, if you want a session with me, if you want to just have a quick conversation, or you want to have a full on session and understand how I can work with you, LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach me.
Yeah, great. I'll definitely put this in the show notes so people can easily find you.
It's been great to be with you.
Yes, most definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome.